Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is StevieWunderKid and welcome back to another GTA 5 drifting video. And after long last, we finally have our brand new drift tuning car, the Benefactor Vorschlaghammer. This is an absolutely legendary car. The German translation for the name is Sledgehammer. Obviously, you guys probably know this is a reference to the Mercedes AMG Hammer, the W124. Absolutely beautiful car. I love the styling of it, and to have it here and a somewhat faithful recreation of the car, it's actually super close to its IRL counterpart. I absolutely love it. And of course, this car is drift tuning, which is another added bonus with it. So really quickly going through some details, you can pick this car up from the Southern San Andreas Super Autos website for 1.79 million, so just under 1.8 million. And I think it's a little expensive, but honestly, that's kind of like the norm nowadays, and Rockstar knows that people are gonna pay that kind of price tag for a car as legendary as this one. And yeah, it's in the sedans class, so really not that useful in races, I don't think, I guess based on Bruffy's testing, but for drifting and for other car stuff, it's a pretty solid car. So today I'm gonna be showing you guys my build with the drift tuning upgrade, and then we're gonna go outside and we're going to go ahead and test the car and see how it feels. So moving right into the mod shop, obviously I already have drift tuning equipped. I did some testing with this car beforehand, though I have heard that this car is pretty solid on low grips as well. Eventually I'll probably test that, but for the drift tuning, that's what we're going to be running today. And my build's pretty simple. For the power upgrades are really the upgrades that are going to affect the car's driftability. Obviously you guys know now that with the recent addition of the Bottom Dollar Bounties DLC, Rockstar's pretty much nerfed the effects of the pre-applied power upgrades and things like that, so they no longer have an effect. So when you're building this car for drift tuning, you could just go right to applying the tuning. You don't have to do anything beforehand, and then afterwards you can throw on some armor like I did. I just maxed out the armor. I find that that helps the car during longer sessions if it's taking a lot of hits, and then pretty much nothing else really. If you want to leave the spoiler stock, I really don't see much of a difference having the spoiler on versus leaving it off, because the car has drift tuning. You could run it on or off, it doesn't really matter. I ran the factory spoiler just because I like the little subtle ducktail look on mine, but yeah, that's another thing to consider. And then lastly, the suspension. I just lowered mine all the way down. This car has quite a bit of like body roll. It feels very spongy and soft and a little bit understeery as a result, so I find that lowering the suspension kind of mitigates the effects of that, not fully, but it definitely does help the steering response, so that's why I ran the lower suspension. And that's really about it, honestly. I left the stock wheels. I went for like this almost like matte, I think what color is this? It is a matte like green, matte foliage green. Honestly, I chose it at random and it kind of stuck, so yeah, that is something that I just kind of chose and I think it works, so I think it looks pretty cool. I kind of tried to style this like a grassroots, like almost like a BMW E30 drift car, and I think I kind of nailed it. It's kind of like you still see some of the resemblance to the original AMG Hammer, but it's kind of its own thing, and I kind of really jive with the build. A couple other things to note about the Vorschlaghammer when you apply the drift tuning. Number one is that it arbitrarily changes the interior, so you guys can see here the interior is all gutted and you actually have no control over whether or not that happens. Whenever you apply the drift tuning, it goes from the stock interior to this, so it's fully carbon, fully gutted out. Personally, not a fan of the way that this looks. Rockstar has given us the option to change this in the past. I don't know why they just didn't give us the original interior customization. I feel like that would have been a really nice addition just to have on hand so we could change it up how we please. So that's kind of an arbitrary thing, and it also adds these really stupid and annoying filler necks for the fuel tank, I guess, assuming I guess the car is a fuel cell or something, because it's like a race car now, I guess. But they add these like fuel tank filler necks at the back here, and it just makes any build just look absolutely horrific. To be honest, I just like try to look away. I try to ignore that. It's really hard to, but yeah, that's another thing you can't change about this car, which kind of sucks. But I guess the other positive thing is when you do equip drift tuning, you have a couple more liveries to play with. So you have this tentacle livery, and by the way, I now know what the tentacles mean, so thank you to everybody that commented on my original drift liveries video, because now I am very well aware what this is in reference to. But yeah, we got that livery, and then the Dent 76, and then I don't know if the Atomic Rays is a drift tuning specific livery, but it's still pretty cool to have like a Falcon inspired one. And then I think the rest of these liveries are ones that you can get on the car without drift tuning. So there are some restricted liveries for drift tuning, and I think these are these three. And another note to make here just in case is if you guys apply one of these special liveries and then you go change the car from drift tuning back to normal and you remove the tuning, it will remove the livery as well, which definitely does kind of suck. So it's a bit restrictive in that regard, but it's still cool to have a couple more options to kit out our drift cars, whether or not you want to do that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my builds. I'm going to leave the mod shop. We're going to head over to the docks and we're going to do a little bit of testing with this car to see exactly how it feels. All right, heading on over to the docks, and I will say, based on a little bit of testing with this car does feel on the heavier side, and it definitely has a lot less grip and like forward drive than some of the other drift tuning cars. I guess I'm comparing it to some of the more like hooked up cars like the Remus and things like that. This car definitely feels a little bit more laggy and boaty, I guess, but I think that's mainly playing into the fact that this is an older vehicle and it's a bit heavier as well. So yeah, that's one thing to consider. Just doing like some, I guess this is more of a high-speed entry, and you guys might notice this too. This car, and I think it's partly because of the power nerf too. If this car wasn't nerfed power-wise, I think it'd feel a lot better. But this car tends to just kind of like understeer and grip up, and it doesn't like holding out really high-speed slides, which I think is this car's major flaw. Beyond that, it feels super smooth, as you guys will see, but high-speed drifting and like any sort of drifting outside of the normal like transition heavy, lots of left foot braking, if you really try to pick up speed, this car doesn't really like it all that much. But yeah, I mean, regardless, like other than those scenarios, I think it feels pretty smooth, as you guys can see here, just kind of linking some lines. It throws a lot of angle, and generally the suspension feels all right. As I said before, it does feel a little bit boaty and spongy, and you guys can see that if you really try to extend out longer turns. You can see the car kind of grips up and it starts doing the one tire fire if I don't give it enough angle, if I don't constantly feed more angle or spam on those left foot brakes to kind of keep the car loose. And another thing that I don't like a lot about this car is the gearing. The gears in this car are really long, so it takes a while for the car to shift out of first, and then when it shifts into second, it just kind of bogs down, and it doesn't really, it just kind of feels like it's lagging along, and you really have to force the car, or you have to pull out a little bit of angle to allow the car to drive forward, and I don't really like that. So the gearing doesn't feel the best. You can definitely drive around it if you want to, and you can again like spam the left foot brakes just to keep the car in the right gear so it doesn't like shift up and kind of fall out of that sweet spot in terms of power. But that's another thing that you kind of gotta settle with for this car. One thing that really helps with this car is it is on the heavier side, so that helps you connect a lot of these like lower to medium speed slides a lot more smoothly, because you can just kind of like toss the car and you have so much inertia and momentum behind you that it just keeps the car sideways, which is really nice. Yeah, I mean, for small stuff like this, and maybe not for like technical drifts, because the car tends to have a little bit more understeer, it's not as snappy as some other cars, but I say for like smooth, simple drifts like what I'm doing here at the docks, it's definitely best suited to that. I wouldn't say that this is necessarily like a competitive competition car. It's not very fast, as you guys can probably tell, and with the power nerf too, I mean, again, this car probably would feel much better with a bit more power from those pre-applied upgrades, but unfortunately now that's not the case. Definitely does feel a little bit laggy and slow, but that doesn't mean it's not smooth. Like, it is pretty solid to drift, as you guys can see. I guess that it handles it well, but you guys can see there on the tail end of that turn, it kind of gripped up a little bit, started to oversteer a little bit, and then it went kind of into that one tire fire because one wheel was slipping while the other was kind of catching traction, which definitely is, again, something you kind of got to fight with this car, especially with these modules. You guys can see that as well, that the car is kind of just like gripping up. One wheel is not sliding, the other one is, and it's just kind of like understeering a little bit too, but it's still a really freaking cool car. Like, this thing drifts pretty solid with a little bit of practice, a little bit of work, and a little bit of finesse in terms of constantly feeding an angle, keeping on the power, and occasionally left foot braking just to keep it smooth. I mean, you can keep the car going. I haven't tried tandems with this car yet, but I feel like this would be a really good tandem car, kind of like some of the other slower and smoother cars that we have, like the Nebula Turbo and things like that. I feel like this car would be pretty evenly matched with some of those. A little bit slower, smoother, heavier, and yeah, generally a little bit more like sluggish cars. Maybe not in a bad way, but in a way that wouldn't make the car super competitive if you were trying to, you know, do like a drift competition. I still think for that, you're definitely best off in the Remus, or even a more like, I mean, aggressive car like the Cypher, a little bit more of a hooked up car. This is kind of the polar opposite of that. Definitely like an older, more classic style of car that's definitely suited for more smoother, slower drifts, smooth tandems, things like that. But honestly, I mean, for the customization is good. I feel like it could have been a bit better. And the other thing that sucks is like the arbitrarily added mods, especially those fueler necks in the back. Definitely a little bit frustrating. I think Rockstar should have just like given us more options to kind of change that up as we please, rather than them just kind of taking the helm with that. I mean, regardless, still a pretty cool car, nice like a cult classic car, and again, people are willing to pay that kind of money for a car like this. It definitely makes sense. But yeah, let's see. Let's hit a higher speed entry here. There we go. Kind of had to force it in. A little bit of understeer, as you guys can see there. There you could really see just how badly this car handles like higher speed turns. You guys saw there, like the gearing kind of made the car bog down a bit, and it kind of fell out of power, and also was kind of understeery at the same time, which definitely does suck. A little bit of contact, but we're right back into it. Let's go. This car is it's not for everybody, I would say. I also wouldn't say it's one of the best drift cars in the game, but I mean, for a drift tuning car, it feels pretty solid, and also it's the only 4-door drift tuning car, which might be an added bonus. Oh man, I looked at the recording and I almost crashed right into that cop. Oh geez. But kind of got to pick your poison with this one. I think there are definitely better cars you can get, especially for the kind of money that you're spending on this thing. But I mean, these cars are all kind of geared towards having fun, and this car definitely is fun. Like, it's not like it's not fun that I would totally recommend against it, but I'd say there's a little bit more better bang for the buck nowadays. So yeah, honestly, I think it's a decent car, not perfectly worth the money, but still a pretty fun time. It's got some unique customization too. What I'm really eager to see actually is how this car drifts with just low grip tires and the mid-drive speed boost, because it seemed like it had the power to do it. So I will definitely be testing that in the future as well. But yeah, definitely a little bit more of a quick video, just kind of going over this car because I know how anticipated it was, and it's pretty good. It's not the best, but it's also not the worst. So if you want to try it out for yourselves, definitely go ahead and do it. But yeah, I'm gonna leave the video there. Expect to see more drift tuning content about not only ranking all of the cars, but some of the really fun tandem sessions and things like that. That will all be coming very soon, so just stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.